What's up guys, Sanjay Shinoy here from Team Pixel Track and welcome to this brand new video in the Content Marketing Mastery course. So let's do a quick recap. In the previous video, we learned why you should be adding multimedia to your content. What are the different kinds of multimedia you can use? This range from images to GIFs to videos to infographics to slides and everything in between. And what are the best places to find these multimedia for your blog? It can be images, it can be Unsplash for images, Pixabay for good footage, Pinterest for like infographics, and so on and so forth. And some tips to use these multimedia effectively without getting into any kind of trouble with the creators of this multimedia. So, what are we learning in this particular video? We're going to be learning the basics of grammar. You might be put off by the whole thought of this lesson, wherein we're going to be talking about grammar, because I think the last time any one of us sat in a class was in school, probably, and that's for most of us was a very, very long time ago. So, but having said that, just give it a thought. In this video, and what I'm trying to do is refresh your perspective of grammar if you already know grammar. And but honestly, I feel that all of us make a lot of grammatical errors. No, I'm not like judging with a barometer of a grammar Nazi, but still, and having said that, some of us can definitely improve our grammar. And when I see around, I see a lot of these mistakes which are repeatedly coming again and again. So, which is why I made this video keeping all of these things in mind, and we'll quickly run through the basics of grammar so that everybody is on the same page when it comes to grammar. So, what are we learning in this video? We'll know why is grammar so important. I think I've already made my point very clear, but I'll give a very specific point why you need to understand grammar to be a better content writer. What are the different parts of speech? This basically again covers all the bases in terms of grammar. We also have different tenses for most of the verbs and all the important punctuation marks. This can be deadly if you don't know how to use punctuation marks appropriately in your sentences. So, why is grammar so important? Now, you need to understand that grammar is what binds language together, and it is what makes you speak about the language, also, right? So, it is like the framework or the groundwork for really effective communication. Imagine if you couldn't talk without grammar and you can make some random words and random sentences. Let's assume that you knew the words of a language, but you did not know the grammar of that language. How would it sound? Try to think of constructing a sentence in a completely different language, and you'll know how ridiculous you'll sound. And that's why grammar is so important, right? Because it glues everything together. It's like, do you guys remember how it used to be back when we had these landlines and if the telephone wire kind of got all jumbled up together, it would cause a lot of static and you couldn't talk properly over the phone. Exactly like that, grammar can really, really affect the meaning and the clarity of the message that you're sending across, or the communication that you're sending across. So, without grammar, there won't be any kind of meaning to the communication that you're doing. There won't be any clarity to it. And some of the most common mistakes or errors that I've come across is sentence structure, which we've already spoken about, subject verb tense, which is very, very common, punctuation, typos, and basic mechanics and parts of speech, right? Even something as simple as a misplaced comma can completely change the meaning of a sentence, right? I'm sure that everybody knows a lot of examples about this. So, what grammar does for written content, it makes it more readable and in turn more interesting, right? Uh, what it helps is that it removes the necessity to repeatedly reword sentences while reading. Then what this allows you to do is you to get the flow and involvement in the communication that you're doing without affecting it. So grammar is super important. Without grammar you wouldn't make sense, and the slightest grammar mistake can send out the wrong signal to your readers, to whoever is consuming your content. So it's very important that you do not mess up with grammar. Now, again, you don't have to be some kind of a grammar Nazi or some kind of a grammar nut. What I'm trying to say here is that try to brush up your knowledge about grammar as much as possible so that you don't make the common mistakes which can easily be avoided, is all I'm saying. So, because just by making these mistakes which can be avoidable, you are putting yourself out there as a less than average content writer. Just by doing this small change in the way you're writing, you can incrementally or exponentially change your skill set as a content writer. So which is why grammar is super important. So what are the different parts of speech? So every time you write, every time you speak, there are your sentences, your words are made of different parts, right? Now these words are basically categorized into certain things, into buckets, which will help us identify what they are in terms of grammar, right? So that is what the parts of speech are. So you have a bunch of words which make a sentence, you have a bunch of sentences which make a paragraph, you have a bunch of paragraph which makes an entire content piece. Right now, what are the different parts of speech? If you had to categorize all these words, all these phrases within the sentence into different buckets, you would categorize them as nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. So let's go one by one and try to understand what all of these things are. I'm sure that you have already studied this in school, and this is pretty much the same case for pretty much every language out there. Every language has these parts of speech. So all you need to do is just, this is like a refresher for you, just like hold on. So let's go one by one and try to understand what each of these things is in terms of the English language. Okay, first up is nouns. So very simple, a noun names a person, animal, place, thing, or even an abstract idea, right? This is what a noun is. And let me just give you a quick example before I get into it. So example, Ram is enjoying his vacation. Now, Ram is also a noun here. Vacation is also a noun here. When I said an abstract idea, this is what I was talking about. Now, noun is the most fundamental block of the language, right? You're always talking about someone, which is the person, or something, which can be an animal or a place or thing itself, or an abstract idea. This makes most of the sentences that you write, right? It makes the subject, the object, and all of those things. So, noun is the most fundamental block of English grammar or any grammar for that matter. So a noun is basically anything that names a person, animal, place, thing, or an abstract idea. So next we have verbs. Now, what do verbs do? So verbs are the action words which describe forms of doing and being. I'll give you an example so that you understand it better. So I am not hungry. Here, it is a form of being. What are you feeling right now? What are you being right now? I am not hungry. Am is a verb here. And doing is Ramesh is going to the mall, right? Going is the verb here, which is a form of doing. So its verbs are basically action words, any kind of words that describe an action of doing or being, it can be a verb. Now, there are different tenses for the verbs, which we'll be getting into a little later on, but let's proceed with the other parts of the speech that we have. We have something called as adjectives. And adjectives basically modify or describe nouns or pronouns by describing, identifying, or quantifying them. So, Shreyas is the most productive employee. Here, productive is the adjective, and Shreyas is the noun, so is the employee. So employee is also the noun here. So it is basically describing what kind of an employee is Shreyas. He's a productive employee. So that's what adjectives do. It's either describing them, it's identifying them, or quantifying them also. If you have like, how heavy was it? It was 20 kgs. So 20 kgs is the adjective in terms of quantifying or something like that. He's a very powerful politician. So here again, you're basically describing what kind of a politician he is. So adjectives usually precede the noun or the pronoun which it modifies, right? So in this case, employee and politician is the noun, and it basically precedes the noun in the English language. Next, we have something called as adverbs. And what do they do? Adverbs modify the verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs by describing them. The same way adjectives modify nouns, adverbs modify verbs, and even adjectives or even other adverbs by describing them. So time is extremely precious, so waste it wisely. Extremely and wisely are the adverbs here. He could run really fast. It's basically modifying another adverb. He could run fast could have been very well been the sentence, and fast would have been an adverb. But here we added another modifier saying he could run really fast. So that becomes like modifying the adverb itself. So adverbs can modify verbs, adjectives. In the first sentence, you can see it's modifying an adjective, and other adverbs also. So the easiest way to recognize adverbs is by they basically answer the questions how, when, where, or how much. So just keep this in mind. Whatever word is answering the question how, when, where, or how much is basically an adverb. So I think a couple of times you mentioned what pronouns. And what are pronouns? Pronouns replace nouns and simplifies the sentence, right? So for example, since Neha had the experience, she volunteered. In this case, she is a pronoun, which is basically replacing Neha, which is the noun. And now imagine if we didn't have pronouns, right? Every time I had to refer to Neha, I had to like always mention Neha's name. Since Neha had the experience, Neha volunteered, Neha did this, Neha did that. So it becomes very cumbersome and unnecessary. So which is why we have pronouns, which basically replaces the nouns and always refers back to the nouns and simplifies the sentence more importantly. They shorten and simplify sentences that would otherwise be way too long and very cumbersome to read and understand. Now we have prepositions. Preposition shows the relationship between a noun or a pronoun and another element in the sentence. I'll give you an example. The shin bone is a device for finding furniture in a dark room. So all of these words like for and in and all of those things are prepositions. Basically, what is the relation between the noun and the pronoun and another element in the sentence? So the shin bone is a device. What is it for? It is for finding furniture. What is the relationship between the shin bone and the furniture in this example? So that is what it's kind of like connecting. And what does it do with the furniture? It helps you find furniture in a dark room. So a preposition shows the relationship between a noun or a pronoun. It basically links nouns and pronouns and phrases to other words in a sentence. Then we have conjunctions. Conjunction shows the connection between the elements of a sentence. She bought a new car but couldn't manage to sell the old one. So two different sentences, usually compound sentences or complex sentences. She bought a new car but couldn't manage to sell the old one. Here, but is the conjunction. So, or because can the conjunction. So these are the conjunctions where it joins two different sentences or different thoughts like we had spoken about earlier. She bought a new car, that is a sentence which is standalone. She couldn't manage to sell the old one. These are two different sentences. So can be, but is related, so can be brought together with a conjunction, in this case the word but. Then we have interjections. Interjections are standalone exclamations that act as conversational fillers, often expressing emotion. So yes, with sufficient effort, you too can become a content marketer. Here, yes is the interjection, and basically they're like conversation fillers. And usually you can see it also comes as part of an emotion. It can be like something like, of course, hell yeah. All of these things are like interjections. So these are the basic parts of speech. I think we had like a quick rundown of all the basic parts of speech. So what you need to understand is the verbs in the parts of speech also have tenses, right? What are tenses? Tenses are basically the period of time you are representing. Basically, it's the present, past, and the future. In the English language, there are 3 tenses with 4 aspects to it. So the three tenses are the present, what's happening right now, past, what has happened already, and future, what is going to happen. So these are the tenses, and the aspects are simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous. And what happens is when you mix both of these things, you get all of these different tenses in the English language. So you have present simple, present continuous, present perfect continuous, and the same thing applies for different sentences. So it basically refers to what is happening right now, what had happened before, and what is going to happen. Now, I'll give you an example of all of these things and quick way to remember all of these tenses and the correct way to use it, because I see a lot of people making mistakes in this particular thing. But before I get into the correct way of using it, you need to understand what are the different things that are there. So let me show you an example. So a present simple, we usually use the present simple tense when an action is happening right now or when it happens regularly, like a routine. So in this example, I play cricket. It's either happening right now or I usually play cricket. Say for example, every Thursday, which I do actually. And present continuous, we use it to indicate an action or condition happening now, frequently, and may continue into the future. I am playing cricket, right? So it is present continuous. The easiest way to remember this, it's a continuous thing. It's happening. It hasn't stopped. So I am playing cricket. Um the present perfect, I have played cricket. It basically refers to an action or state that either occurred at an indefinite time in the past or began in the past and continued to the present time. Right? I have played cricket. It started at some time, but it has ended right now. So it is present perfect. And then we have present perfect continuous. I have been playing cricket. Again, it has both the elements of perfect and continuous. So have been. The easiest way to understand perfect continuous aspect of tenses is it usually has have been or has been. So that's the easiest way to like remember. So most of these things are present perfect continuous. In the same way, we have past simple, which is I played cricket. You use past simple basically used to talk about things that happened or existed before now. So that's basically is past simple is very simple. Past perfect is basically used to talk about actions that were completed before some point in the past. So I was playing cricket. Now, did you see the difference between the present continuous and the past continuous? I am playing cricket. I was playing cricket. So in the present continuous, it might continue. In past continuous, it has stopped. It is not happening anymore, which is why I was playing cricket. And past perfect, I had played cricket. And past perfect continuous, I had been playing cricket. So if you see this, it's very simple. Um, you basically understand how this whole thing works if you look at it right next to each other. So look at the present continuous, past continuous, and future continuous together, and you'll understand all of these things way better than what I'm trying to make you understand in terms of the technicalities of it, right? It's very simple. Usually, the past tense of most words is you with an ed, ending with an ed, and most of the continuous will have an ing. Most of the perfect will have had in them in the whole sentence. Perfect continuous will be have been or had been. So very simple way. This is like a trick that I use to remember most of these things. Just one thing that though some of the verbs called irregular verbs, the past tense is not always with ed. For example, the past tense of buy is bought. Right? These are irregular verbs. So not every verb has the past tense with an ed. But you can like you can use it as a blanket statement, and most of the verbs come with ed. So the past is written with an ed, the continuous is written with an ing, and the perfect is with have had ed again, and the perfect continuous usually has have been or had been. So very simple way to like understand all of this, understand all the different things. So just go through, pause the video if you have to, just go through the examples that I have written here, and you'll understand what each of these things mean and how you need to use each of these things to describe exactly what is happening right now, or what was happening before, or what is going to happen. So that is all that needs to be, you need to understand. Again, this is something that every language shares, most of it. It is the basic structure of it. Most languages share. Whatever language that you studied in will definitely have all of these things, all because most languages have verbs and verbs have tenses. So you can apply the same concepts in your local mother tongue language or whatever you studied in, and apply it to the English language as well. So yeah, that's that about tenses. Just go through this chart real quick, and if you have any questions regarding this, it can be quite tricky sometimes. But just go through this chart. I simplified it as much as possible. And if you still have any doubts, let me know in the comment section below. So what do we have next? And then there were punctuations. This is like a big problem for most of them, which is why I thought that this deserves a special mention in the video. So let's learn everything that we can about punctuation, shall we? So what are all the important punctuations that you need to know about? There are more punctuations that what I mentioned here, just a couple more, but I'm just talking about the important ones, the ones that make a lot of difference. So the most easiest one is the full stop. Everybody knows about the full stop. This is also sometimes referred to as the period, but since most of us in India call it a full stop, I'm just going to call it a full stop. Then we have commas, then we have the exclamation, we have the question mark, we have colons, we have semicolons, we have the apostrophes, and we have the hyphen. So these are the most important punctuations which you will use uh, rather regularly, rather frequently in your language. And punctuations make a lot of difference because it completely changes the meaning of a sentence if you don't use your punctuation properly. Now, when you're talking, you are pausing, so there is a lot of intonation, there is a lot of stress that you put on words and all of these things. And you cannot do that while writing without punctuations, which is why punctuations are super important. And the kind of pause, the kind of stress, the kind of excitement that you can bring from your body language and from your tone and from your voice in real life when you're talking, punctuation allows you to do the same thing when you're writing. So just think of it like that. So let's go one by one in terms of the punctuations and understand what these things are. Um, so the full stop is pretty simple. The primary use of a period, which is full stop, is to end a sentence. Its second important use is for abbreviations, right? For example, they went to the mall to buy some clothes. Full stop. N dot S dot A N S A. So when you're talking about abbreviations and short forms, you basically use the full stop. This is, but primarily it is used to end a sentence. Commas, the most overused, misused punctuation in the English language, right? Now, what do commas do? You need to use commas to separate independent thoughts in a sentence, or to highlight a separate thought, or to separate lists. Let's take examples. The game was over, comma, space, but the crowd refused to leave. Now, these are independent thoughts, and you have put the word but how do you bring in that pause that you need to indicate to the reader when they're reading? Now, you put that just before the but. You have used the conjunction but the game was over, comma, but the crowd refused to leave. Now, without this comma, I would probably read it as the game was over, but the crowd refused to leave. Now, it doesn't carry the same kind of punch or the same kind of messaging that you would intend to. If since we have put a comma there, the game was over, but the crowd refused to leave. So that it makes it like slightly different with that short pause right about there. Now, again, what it does is it also like helps you highlight a separate thought. In this case, say Ananya and Aziz, the couple from next door, are coming for dinner tonight. So here the sentence is Ananya and Aziz are coming for dinner tonight. That's the only sentence, that is the main thought that is in the sentence, but you are describing who Ananya and Aziz are, and you are putting that thought in between this sentence. Ananya and Aziz, comma, the couple from next door, comma, are coming for dinner tonight. So it kind of highlights a separate thought also, and it also separates like lists of things like I love apples, comma, pears, comma, and oranges. Um, so yeah, commas are like super misused and super overused also. So use it only to like separate independent thoughts, to put in that pause there, and to highlight separate thoughts or to separate lists. These are the only three things you need to understand when it comes to commas. If you just follow these three things, most of your mistakes is going to be like taken care of. And some people don't even use commas, which makes it all the more difficult to like read sentences. So definitely use them, but don't overuse them or misuse them. So yeah. Next we have the exclamation, and you have to only use the exclamation when you when issuing a command, speaking forcefully, or as a sign of emotion. This is the only time when you should be using it. Again, people overuse it. Trust me, you just need one exclamation mark. You don't have to put like eight exclamation marks. Doesn't make it that much more important by putting so many exclamation marks. Of course, our whole text lingo has completely changed the usage of exclamation. But technically speaking, conventionally speaking, you need to use an exclamation only when you're like, speaking forcefully or issuing a command or like sign of emotion. So let's take a few examples. The concert was amazing. So here, it's a sign of emotion. Construction ahead. This is more like an alert which you are speaking forcefully and telling people. So usually, and you need to be using it at the end of a sentence. So the exclamation is always at the end of the sentence, and you cannot and you should not combine it with any other punctuation marks, including a full stop. So this in itself is a standalone punctuation mark that can stand on its own without the use of any other punctuation marks. Now we have the question mark. Uh, this is a fairly easy punctuation mark to use. It basically has one use and one use alone. It goes at the end of a sentence, which is a question. Are you paying attention? Are you guys? Where are you right now? So at the end of the each of the question, each of the sentence, which is a question, just put a question mark. Come on, this is pretty much common sense. Everybody knows this. Colons. So the colon is used. The colon is two dots which are vertically placed below each other. I'll show you the example. The colon is used to signal that something very specific is coming your way, which is most often a list or a series of directions, quotation, or any other comments that is trying to illustrate or explain the statement. So, for example, when I use example, I put a colon, which is those two dots. You have to complete the following task. Colon again. Again, number one is research on the topic. Number two, come up with new content ideas around the topic. Here is basically when I say you have to complete the following task. So and it is proceeded with a colon. Now I'm signaling that very specific information is going to come here, which turns out to be a list, right? So this is how a colon is used. Now we have his cousin semicolon, which again people either not use it at all because they feel that I don't know how to use it, so might as well not use it. So let me introduce you to say semicolon. Maybe you might find it interesting enough to use it in your writing henceforth. So it kind of indicates a pause that's a little longer than a comma, but not quite as long as end of a sentence full stop. Now I thought to put in the actual technical definition of a semicolon, but that won't quite drive home the point I thought, because semicolons are basically joints related independent clauses in very compound sentences. So that's the what it does in essence. It just indicates a pause which is slightly longer than a comma, but not quite as long. I'll give you an example so that you'll understand. The captain was surprised they actually won the match, right? Here it's very these are two independent thoughts, but they're actually related to the same event, right? So the captain was surprised they actually won the match, and you can put in a word like but then again, like it kind of like takes away the nice punch you can add with the semicolon. So this is how we use a semicolon. I strongly suggest or recommend you to like go ahead and try out the semicolon. Even if you get it wrong, it's fine. And if you're using one of the tools that I'll be suggesting, so I think it can catch when you're using the semicolon in a wrong way. So I hope I've made it simple enough to understand semicolon. Next, we have apostrophes. Again, something that a lot of people make mistakes with. Uh, it basically shows any form of possessiveness of nouns, or it shows omission of letters. So let's take an example. The boys hat. Uh, Here, the punctuation mark between the letter Y and the S is what we are talking about here. What is what the apostrophe is. Now, you are talking about the possession of the boy, which is the hat. And this is how you're using most of the time the apostrophe is used like this, the boy's hat. Now, it is used for something to describe the possession of something of the noun. A lot of people use it very differently. They use it to indicate plurals, right? So that is the mistake that a lot of people do with apostrophes. They use apostrophes to indicate plurals. So that is wrong. You need to use apostrophes only to indicate possessiveness, or something like he'll go, which is like omission of letters, which is actually he will go, but you're saying he'll go, which is how a lot of people speak, and a lot of people also write it like this. So when you're talking about he'll go, omission of letters, or like 10 o'clock, that's also where you use an apostrophe. So yeah, don't use it for plurals. A lot of people make this mistake. Use it to show possessiveness, or use it to show omission of letters. Just keep it simple. The last one is hyphens. Now you use a hyphen to join two or more words serving as a single adjective before a noun with certain prefixes. Okay, now for example, chocolate covered peanuts. Now this is a single adjective to describe the peanuts. Now instead of using it as two different words, you just put a hyphen and you make it like a collective adjective. You also use it with prefixes like ex-husband, ex-wife. I don't know why I use this example, but anyway. So you either use it to mix two or more words which can act as a single adjective, or with just certain prefixes. Just remember these two things for hyphens and you should be good to go. So that's the end of your grammar lesson. I hope you had a refresher. I hope you learned something new today. I hope you had a new perspective of these things. So I try to make them as simple as possible so that everyone understands this and stops making these mistakes that we spoke about in the video. That itself puts you and positions you as a very intelligent writer. That's more than enough for a start. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you think it was still complicated, if you have questions, if you have any doubts, put them in the comment section below. I will be more than glad to answer them. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any more questions, you can always shoot me an email at sanjay@pixeltrack.in. Check out my blog sanjayshenoy.com. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys.